World Championship Wreckage, presenting wrestling the way you remember it.
What is going on, everybody? We did not die. We are here. For this episode, it's the OGs, the originals, me and Will. What up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm good, man. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
We were discussing how wild and crazy life is,
Yep.
and it's nice to be back here. World Championship Wreckage, doing the original, the OG way of doing things.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is something I brought up to do a while ago because we've been gone for a while, but it's life, and life takes precedent because this ain't paying anything. So today we're talking about something we have never talked about ever on this show, and that's TNA, Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, and we're talking about the Asylum years, the early years, the very beginning. What so many people, like even I said it back in the day, which I didn't get to see a lot of it when it first aired. WCW 2.0, because it was a lot of that late talent in WCW kind of moving over to this new company, like in AJ Styles, and we'll talk about AJ, but it was different and it was weird. But for me, I never, like I said, the reason that I wanted to bring up TNA and talk about it on an episode, especially the Asylum years, was I am watching TNA from the very beginning. Like when I first announced this, I had just finished the Asylum years, so now I'm in 2007 now, watching it from the beginning. So I just finished when I was getting the little one to sleep, watching Sacrifice 2007. So Kurt Angle just won the NWA title, and I'm pretty sure the next month is when it first it changes into the quote unquote TNA title. But yeah, so we're gonna be talking about the Asylum years in Tennessee. Not in Florida, not at Universal. This was in Tennessee, and Will is from Tennessee. So, Will, when I say the TNA Asylum years, what first comes to your mind?
Divorced dad rock.
Yeah. Cage dancers.
I jokingly say that for two reasons. One, you're absolutely right in the playoff of the old WCW stuff, but also because that 2002, 2003, 2004 range, literally the heart of the Asylum years, was, I come from a broken home. My mom and my dad divorced when I was a kid. So with my dad living in downtown Nashville, on dad's weekends, there were only certain things to do. We would go to Titans games. We would go to Sounds games. We would go to TNA wrestling. You know what I mean? Eventually the Preds were around, but they kind of sucked. So we didn't really fuck with hockey very much. But essentially that was it. So for me, this was that formidable, 16, 17, 18 years old Will. You know what I mean? And I was very much coming out of that Attitude Era, that Too Hot to Trot Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and then going into this. This was, to me, it was WCW, but with just enough WWF to make me go, this is different. Yeah. In a good way, because it wasn't really all WCW, but it wasn't WWF either.
Yeah.
It had enough familiar names and enough familiar people that it wasn't like watching a whole new show.
Yeah.
Even for a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah. Well, I had this kind of comparison. If you look at the very first AEW All In, it was a variety show for the most part. It played
was a
the
super
hits.
Indie show.
Yeah, it played the hits. You got great wrestling.
Oh yeah.
But then you got the inflatable penises walking down the aisle for some comedy, right? You look at that, the very first few episodes, it's a freaking variety show. You've got the what's the PC way of of saying this. Uh, Little people wrestling.
Yeah. The
I forget what they.
Russo-isms. Well, just the Russo-isms.
Yeah, you got Ed Ferrara being
Yeah.
Ed Ferrara on camera with his bad braids coming down. Lots of focusing on the cage dancers, like in between matches, and matchups and people being presented as main eventers that were never ever main eventers ever again. Like Brian Lawler was focused as a main eventer during the
Yeah.
initial time. Like it was such a like I if you can make it through the Asylum years of TNA, I now I haven't watched everything. Like I haven't got to the Hogan era yet, but I've seen some. But I'm like, I feel like if I make it through the Asylum age, I can get through anything with TNA, and get to the really good stuff. But yeah, it's a variety show as we start off.
Looking back at it, like honestly, I was ill prepared for this episode because we had talked about it and then I just kind of let it ride. And now it's like, oh shit, we're doing it now. So I jumped into it. I pulled some matches and I started looking back through some of the stuff. And when you talk about pro wrestling on the internet, as we do, it's always like the dream matches. And that's always the thing. And then you look back at some of this TNA stuff and we'll dive through it some. Ken Shamrock versus Sabu for the NWA World
Seriously.
title in a ladder match.
Yeah.
Raven versus Jeff Jarrett. AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown as a tag team. Like you had Jeff Jarrett versus Jeff Hardy. Like in an NWA World, like, and I'm obviously reading off of a list, but then it's like a who's who of late 90s and early 2000s wrestling, and you look back at that list and you're like, you know, they said it in The Office. Andy goes, I wish you would know when the good old days were when they're happening. You know, like I look back at some of this and I'm like, dude, 2004 wrestling was hungry as shit. Because you look at what TNA was putting out and then you think about like that ruthless aggression era kicking off and everything that was coming through with, you know, Brock and Cena and Orton and everything. Like, dude, if you were watching wrestling in 04 and 05, how were you not fucking happy about it? Like, there's so much good stuff happening around that range. And it's like, I look at it now and I'm like, those were the good old days. Like, the Attitude Era was great, but like the early TNA, like giving you that alternative to WWE by putting all of these guys over, like giving them a place to work, like fires me up, man. Yeah. Like it was a heyday for pro wrestling.
Now, there's going to be plenty of good to talk about, but we do have to talk about some of the shitty stuff first. Let's talk about something like, what's the best thing we can talk about? Bad off the top of the. I mean, I mentioned Brian Lawler. Rest in peace, Brian Lawler. But I don't. You had, God, I don't even want to say his name. You had the Disco Inferno as the main eventer.
You did?
Going for a world title.
The way it was described, I talked to our boy Vince Russo when he was on Botch Bots and Share Shots, No Free Shoutouts. We kind of talked about coming into TNA a little bit, you know what I mean? And he talked about how you had like essentially, especially in early TNA, a big pissing contest because you had like early on it was Jeff Jarrett and Jerry Jarrett, then Russo, and then fucking Dutch Mantel and Ed, and then eventually Dixie Carter. And I know we start getting a little bit past that, the Asylum Years, but the way Russo described it was like a bunch of people in a room and they all ran to a corner and then pissed in a circle, and then they wanted to fight over where it overlapped. So it was like the variety show analogy is exactly that, because it was like this part of the show was written by person A, this part of the show was written by person B, and then they figure out how to stick it together. And it was like some of it worked and some of it didn't.
I mean, you had Toby Keith come and
Frank-
suplex Jeff Jarrett.
Frank
You
White
had you had
and
NASCAR drivers. You had baseball personalities like
Kyle Vanden Bosch, the linebacker from the
Yeah.
Titans, coming in with
Like, you
Frank
had-
Wycheck and the tight end and everything. Like, dude, that was prime Nashville, dude.
but it all for the most part, it very was like in that area. Like, there were times where I'm like, I mean, I live, you know where I live. I'm right outside of Charlotte.
You're in the heart of Hardy and Flair country, my man.
I am right. I mean, NASCAR
Yeah.
Central, and
Yeah.
like they brought that I forget which driver it was, and I was like, who? Like, and then it's like some minor league or somebody from like the Chicago White Sox shows
dude.
up, and it's like Dale Torborg, who was the demon, the Kiss Demon, is like their strength and conditioning coach now for the White Sox. So that ties it back into wrestling. There's a lot of bad.
You got to think about too.
They're finding their voice. They're finding their legs. They're trying to figure out what the hell they're going to be.
The internal politics of Middle Tennessee. The Jarretts were involved with the building of the Music City Super Speedway or whatever, right outside of Nashville, the NASCAR track. They were involved with building that to bring NASCAR to Tennessee. So they were doing any and everything they could to put over whatever they had money invested in. If it was NASCAR, if it was Titans football, if it was, Sounds baseball, like the things that I jokingly about the divorced dad rock, man, that's what the early TNA, the Jarretts would do whatever they could to get TNA publicized.
Yeah.
If that meant bringing in NASCAR drivers that you've never heard of, but that's also kind of the great thing about it, because WWE uses celebrities all the time. You know what I mean? And TNA was doing it back then. They were just kind of B-list celebrities. So.
Yeah. So I have a big statement, and I want your answer on this. True or false? Because I say true. TNA would not have survived, nor would not be going on today, if it was not for the X division.
1,000% true.
Yes.
I think unequivocally, I will say on air right now that X division title has made more stars than the actual TNA World Championship has.
I agree with that.
I think the TNA World title coming off of the NWA World title and then going into the Wildcat and then, all of the things where we'll transition. I'm sure we'll eventually get to talk about all the different versions of the Impact World title now. But like that X Division title was that one part of TNA that was uniquely theirs. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It really wasn't a cruiserweight title, but it wasn't truly an intercontinental title.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, a heavyweight title. It was this ambiguous thing.
Like,
and
no one really could explain the X division. Like, there's no weight limits. It's no limits. Like, like, what the hell does that mean? Like,
it gave us the Ultimate X match. Which, in my opinion, is one of the most innovative matches. Next to one I know we're going to talk about, because if you don't have it in your notes, I'm 1,000% bringing it up. It's one of the most unique matches in wrestling history.
Oh, yeah.
And I will put a stamp on it, because there's not anybody else that's ever done a match like that. Suspending it above the ring, off the 4 posts with them coming together, because it's not just a ladder match. You've seen, who was it? It was Christopher Daniels, and he did the swinging cutter off of the X. You know what I mean? Like, you've seen so many people do things without the Ultimate X match. Like, yes, 1,000% TNA wrestling was made because of that division.
So, which we brought up Ultimate X, and I was going to talk about it, but while we're here, I am very surprised that they continued to do Ultimate X as many fuck ups as the first one had. That belt fell off 5 or 6 times. Like, they had to keep, quote unquote, restarting it. So I am shocked that they were like, you know what, let's do this again. But hey, they figured it out. They got it to work. But let's talk about some of the staples of early TNA, the Asylums, like the people that, I mean, we're going to start it. He's Mr. TNA. If you don't think this person of TNA, AJ Styles is that company. People were like, oh no, it's Jarrett. No. It is AJ Styles.
Okay, it's really funny that you say that, because I also have somebody else that I would almost say that it is.
All right, who's that?
Kurt Angle.
Or he's not Asylum yet. He comes in.
Oh, I guess he's maybe not the Asylum. The Asylum,
Yeah.
100% would be AJ or Jeff Jarrett. 1,000%, yeah.
Maybe
with a little bit
you
of
throw
Ron
Raven.
Killings.
And Raven. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
throw Raven in there too. But yeah, like Kurt's that second
But yeah, I
iteration. Like,
misunderstood what we were
we're on
talking
Spike
about,
TV by now. We're doing, instead of doing like the like they're doing monthly quote unquote pay-per-views, not the like weekly pay-per-views.
Yeah.
But yeah, AJ, Ron the Truth Killings, and a tag team that I am a super fan of now that I'd never got to watch their stuff on, America's Most Wanted. Like, how the hell Vince McMahon did not like cash in on that tag team or cash in on either of them as individuals, but damn Wildcat Chris Harris, holy shit. Like, I am a huge fan of him now.
He's also super active on TikTok.
Really?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's who that is. I think it's Wildcat Chris Harris. But looking through it as well, and it's one of those broken record moments because you look at some of the Ravens of the world, and they came through, and a lot of these tag teams and stables gave second life to careers.
I loved his run, and he's like my destiny to get the TNA or the NWA world title. Like, it was great.
And that was some of the best parts about it. And America's Most Wanted is one of those tag teams as well, where you look at things like Ring of Honor later with like the Motor City Machine Guns or anybody like that who really didn't get over in WWE in that bulk of their career.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they've came in, they've won the titles since, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, for a long time, Motor City Machine Guns were that anti-WWE tag team because they had been successful everywhere. And America's Most Wanted was almost like that. You know what I mean? They hit that pinnacle outside of WWE, and you're right. Why didn't they want to pull the trigger on somebody like that? Because they seemed red hot in TNA.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, they had the titles a ton during the Asylum years. Like, they were consistent. They started. I mean, and I liked how they started out TNA, where it was like they were at odds almost, like there had been problems, and they resolved them through the storyline, and so then they were really hot. And then like I'm just now at the point where they've broken up and they've fought. Like the match that I just watched with them was one of the bloodiest matches I've ever seen. Like, you talk about a crimson mask, like Cowboy James Storm's face, like you can barely see his eyebrows because of how red his face is. But other people that kind of stood out, that one person that I was very wishy-washy on. Like, I'm like, oh God, he's so freaking annoying. And then, oh, okay, he's okay. Oh no, he's back to being annoying. Depending on if he was a heel or the alpha male Monty Brown. Like, I was like, if you yell pounce one more time, I'm just gonna fast forward through every segment you're in.
He's one of those, like you said, that's a WCW gimmick. Like, you would have seen Monty Brown in WCW if he was 15 years older.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it was one of those, it was very much a character gimmick, and it was a choice. But again, looking at some of the lists that I pulled up, Sabu and Monty Brown, D'Lo Brown versus Monty Brown. Like, the dude wrestled some names, and like, he was there. And
it's title shots against Jeff.
That was the beauty in what TNA was, is that like it gave you so many people that didn't necessarily go on to WWE, but continued to have pretty solid wrestling careers. James Storm being a perfect example of that.
Oh yeah.
Lending off of what he's done and where he's been and everything, all the way back around to still being active today in the NWA and like, man, like these early TNA originals, even David Young is still active.
In Eric Young?
No. Eric Young. Yeah. No, EY was there, but no. I'll look his name up. He wrestles with the Independent, and I'm pretty sure his name is David Young. I'll look it up and let you know. But like some of these original TNA guys are still on the Independents around this area now.
Mm-hmm. Well, whether it's the person or not, but I'm gonna bring up Eric Young for a second. And this is getting into that line where we cross from the asylum into the next generation. But my favorite thing so far in TNA, what I've watched up to, was Team Canada. Like Eric Young, Bobby Roode, P.D. Williams, and freaking Scott D'Amore. Like Scott D'Amore as a talent is like God sent. Like put him back on my screen. Like you know me. Like it's hard for me to watch AEW right now. Like it's hard for me to watch AEW. You put Scott D'Amore on that TV, I might watch it every week. Like uh but yeah, Team Canada was great. Like they were, I mean, like you had P.D. Williams who had the Canadian Destroyer, which was the first time we really saw that here. And people were like, "Oh, I gotta hate them because they're Canadian." But damn, that's a cool move. Like, and like it's weird now seeing PD like as a producer like breaking up fights on WWE, and I'm just like, "What up, PD?"
Yeah, every time I see Hurricane Helms come out, I say it. I'm like, "There's a hurricane."
Kind of coming, yeah.
But it's funny seeing some of these guys come out as producers.
Yeah.
I stand on the fact that the Canadian Destroyer, like the DDT and the Super Kick, have become overused to a point. It went from being the most like dominant, damaging looking finish in the business to being something that you see like the Orange Cassidy Penta spot where they did like 10 back to back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think, speaking of Eric Young, it was David Young, by the way.
Yeah, I forgot there was David Young.
Yeah.
He was the one that lost every match. Like,
he was very much a lower mid card guy, but he was a TNA original, and he still uses that to this day on the Indies as being a TNA original. You know what I mean? Like,
friend of the show, Crowbar was in TNA.
Crowbar, yeah, absolutely. Eric Young, alumni of Botch Bots and Share Shots. My second interview, believe it or not. I don't know how I managed to get EY as my second interview ever. But talking about early Asylum years, he said that TNA gave birth to his career in more ways than he can genuinely say it, because they gave him shots at different points when he needed it most. You know what I mean? Like, in a lot of ways, TNA gave these guys a spot. Like I said, it gave so many people a chance to work when there wasn't other major promotions to work in.
Yeah.
And wrestling needs that. Wrestling needs more than just WWE, because there's so many good, talented wrestlers out there that need to get over.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to throw some names at you and just get your opinion and your thoughts. Some of them you might be like, who? Let's start off. Hold on. Where is he? And I became a big fan of his. Like, he was in WCW. But those floundering days of WCW, like, okay, they're so like, all right, I remember them, but not enough to like recall them. I can't be like, oh yeah, and then they did this and Prime Time Elix Skipper.
That's one of those names that when I saw it, I was like, I remember the name, I don't remember the person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like hearing it, I was like, I remember like seeing it on the list and hearing it now. I was like, I remember the name, but
so he tagged with Christopher Daniels for a while.
Okay.
They were part of that Russo group that were trying to take over TNA near the beginning. And then they had a fantastic 6 Sides of Steel cage match with America's Most Wanted. He's the one that does you see him walk the edge of the cage and does the Hurricane Rana.
Oh yeah, okay,
yeah. That move they use to this day.
Fantastic.
Somebody that popped up on my screen, and I had to send a picture to our buddy Mike DePlessis and be like, "Who the hell is this on my screen?" Eric Watts, son of Cowboy Watts. Jim Ross's,
Yeah. Again, that's one of those weird, like, mid-card TNA
Yeah.
guys that I hear the name, it sounds familiar, but I can't put a face to.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're putting me on the spot here, dude.
Yeah.
Like, fucking deep cuts.
One that you're going to know who he is, but I don't know if you're going to know him by this name. Mad Mikey.
Mikey Whipwreck?
No,
Who is it?
that's freaking Crash Holly.
Holy shit. Really?
Mad
In
Mikey.
TNA?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Very short. I mean, very short stint.
Like a cup of coffee, as they say.
Okay, this is one that I told Mike this, and he's like, damn it, Justin. Like, now I'm never gonna like not be able to think this. This is if you took Shawn Michaels
Yeah.
and Kid Rock and they had a baby,
Mm-hmm.
Kid Cash.
Wow. I accept everything about that statement.
Yes. And they even tried and then they tried to give him like the Diesel character in the Dallas character, right? But yeah, but if Shawn Michaels and Kid Rock had a baby, there's Kid Cash. Like
Yeah.
Sanjay Dutt.
Dude, I love the fact. I think it's Hard to Kill like 04 or something like that, and it's got a Sanjay Dutt match on it.
Mhm.
Like,
He's great. He's
yeah.
great. This is the most I've got a chance to like ever see him. Someone who is a standout in the Asylum years, but then just kind of disappears. Sonny Siaki.
That's another one where the name sounds familiar, but I can't put a match to it though.
Like I had never heard of him.
Like,
never
yeah.
seen him, but just stand out. Simon Diamond.
That one I feel like I should for sure know.
Yeah. And you got people that come in and out. Like you have like Ricky Morton, you have Roadkill from ECW, you know, Percy Pringle, aka Paul Bearer, shows up for a little bit. But like this is one thing I told like Mike and I were talking about the Asylum years. There's so many times where they have a storyline going and then it just drops off because the talent leaves. Like it happens quite a bit. Like Lex Luger shows up for a couple weeks and then he's gone. Larry Zbyszko was there and then he was gone. And then he comes back as like an authority figure and everything. Jerry Lynn is a standout in the Asylum years. I mean, it's him and AJ back and forth for that X Division title.
Well, it's some of those ECW, WCW guys that didn't get a home in WWF.
Mm-hmm.
Crowbar talked about it, how like oversaturated and overpopulated it became. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and he said it was just, again, TNA was that landing spot. It gave some of these guys a chance to wrestle when they didn't make it in WWE or didn't have a chance to make it in WWE. You know what I mean? Or some of them didn't even get the call. Like, it was just Jerry Lynn is a perfect example of it. Of a guy who had a spot in who TNA gave a spot to.
Yeah. You had the people from WCW like the Lash LaRues and the Lodies and like you. I mean, episode 1, you bring in Scott Hall, like immediately challenging for the world title. Like it's like they definitely were like, okay, here's your big names. Here's what's going to make you tune in. But then here's our X division. It's the same formula WCW did, cruiserweights, right?
It absolutely is.
Like,
and then you mix people like Low-Key in, who was one of the first TNA guys, and then he did the same thing a couple years later, copy and paste in the New Jersey area with Ring of Honor in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
He's back where I am right now, but he's Sin Shi.
Yeah. But that was kind of one of those things, him and Homicide and those
Amazing
guys.
Red.
Yeah. Like these guys were all there and you see them throughout and they're still around today. You know what I mean? Again, some of these guys who never got the call from Connecticut, as they say with WWE, but have had consistent work everywhere, and it started with TNA.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Steve Mack was another one of those guys that rolled around in early TNA, you know, with Homicide and Low Key. So it's so much like you can say about what they did for the business as far as who they gave jobs to. You know what I mean? The amount of people that got to work because of TNA.
I think I talked about people like Ricky Morton and Lex Luger, you know, that were there for a cup of coffee. The person that I think that if he doesn't show up, doesn't put his stamp of approval on this, which he's done not just for this company, he's done it for other companies, but I think really like I don't know, it just felt special with him being there, was Dusty Rhodes, and he was there for quite a while. Like he was in the Asylum Years, like he's there, he's an authority figure. You get some comedy stuff with him and Tracy Brooks and Trinity. Which I'm always just like, it's weird to see Trinity there at that point. She later did go to WWE. But yeah, like he's there and you see him. It's just like, it's like how he was with NXT. And when he went to ECW, all this like young talent, he's just like, let's do some work. Like that's just, you can just see the joy in his face of being there. But it's that's kind of another moment too. I'm just like, if Dusty Rhodes doesn't get there, I don't know. Like that's a big name to put for a good chunk of time in your early years of development. Because people know, I mean, even if Dusty Rhodes is one of those where it's like, you may not be a wrestling fan, but you've heard that name.
You know who the American Dream is.
Yeah, you may not like. It's not like, I mean, fuck you, Terry, but I mean, you know, Hulk Hogan's different. That's on a whole other stratosphere. But like you at least have been like, I've heard that name before. Like
I think the thing to remember about Dusty Rhodes is if he had, this is going to sound morbid, if Ric Flair never came back from the airplane crash, Dusty Rhodes would be the biggest wrestling star to have ever lived. The only reason Dusty wasn't number one forever was because Flair came back from the plane crash.
Okay.
And his career, I think Dusty, the most important thing to remember about Dusty is he put his stamp of approval everywhere he worked. You know what I mean? He was a booker and a promoter and a worker for a long time. He was,
and you can see a difference in the product too. In the time when he's there, there's a difference. You can tell he's backstage, you know, having these kids under the learning tree, if you will. But you can just tell a difference in the product.
And you saw that everywhere the man worked. You could see that Dusty effect ripple out. You saw it in NXT and the plethora of talent from that 2012, 2013 range with your Seth Rollins and all of those guys coming through. Like Dusty put his hands on every single one of those guys. And then you look at just the ridiculous lists of world champions that have came through because of that. And that learning tree, like you said, those roots run deep. And they were in ECW, WCW, Jim Crockett Promotions, WWE, and they were very much in TNA.
Yeah. You brought him up earlier, and I've got to bring him up. And he's been with the company on and off. He's there currently. But Jeff Hardy's first run in TNA is in the Asylum Years, and it is trash. He does nothing. And you know me, even though I'm from North Carolina, I am not, I'm a Matt Hardy fan more than I am a Jeff Hardy fan. But I was always more of a Dudley Boys fan if you're looking at like that time frame. But like it is trash. He does nothing. He doesn't talk on the mic. All he does is jump off a high crap onto Abyss. That's it. And like I know he eventually comes back, and I know eventually he wins the world title. I know he eventually has his own freaking belt, and I know he's part of Hogan's group. Like, I know that's coming as I get further along. But like, it's like that's a big name, a big first jump from WWF, WWE to them. Like, yes, D'Lo Brown was there, and that's great. But no offense to D'Lo Brown, I love D'Lo Brown, best European champion of all time. Like, not on the level of Jeff Hardy. Like, and it's like you have Jeff Hardy, and you do nothing with him.
You also got to think about the really shitty situation in Jeff's life. I pulled my notebooks out because in trusty Will Gray fashion, I knew I had some notes somewhere. We just did a Jeff Hardy episode for Botch Spots After Dark, and the title of the episode was Your Own Worst Enemy. Like the lit song, you have surprised me and my own worst enemy. But the thing with Jeff Hardy's career from beginning to end was real highs and real lows, peaks and valleys throughout his. And his first TNA run was the valley, of like the first big valley in his career, because he got the Taker rub in WWE, got his first world title run, and then fell off because of drugs and alcohol. When he was in TNA, this was the Sting debacle, where he was too effed up to...
We're not there yet. Yet.
Was that not in his first TNA run?
No.
Okay, well, still, the analogy still works then, was because he's coming off the high of his WWE run and losing the job and having to find work elsewhere. Yeah. I'm just off on my timeline, rather, but I apologize. But still, you see that low. You know what I mean? And then he comes back up, and then he comes back to TNA, and back, and it's that very Jeff Hardy thing to do.
So I have a question for you.
Answer.
And I know you're not a Sting fan. Like, you don't dislike him. You're just not like, Sting is my guy. So you know I was going to bring up Sting.
Yeah.
Where I am right now, I'm past that. I'm past that Asylum Years by a couple years now. And this is where Sting finally like officially like signs. But in the Asylum Years, he comes and goes. He's a surprise tag team partner with Jeff Jarrett, and everything. What do you think it was about TNA that made Sting go, I'm gonna sign here and not Connecticut? And not like, let's leave out the whole like, oh, he heard, The Rock say to Booker T, who are you? Like that, it felt disrespected. But like, what do you think? What was the appeal to him right there? This is a startup company from scratch.
All of his friends worked there.
Okay.
A lot of the people he worked with in WCW worked there. He lived in the area. You know what I mean? Like, this southeast area for him was home.
Yeah.
Like, even living in like Western North Carolina, like he could drive to Nashville and back in a day. You know what I mean? Or spend the night after tapings and be home the next day. You know what I mean? The travel schedule was better. He wasn't on the road as much. They weren't traveling at all. He could show up and do tapings and again go home and be home till the next round of tapings. Or, it checked so many boxes for a guy like Sting. It makes sense for him to have decided to do that, especially at that point in his career. Because after WCW, he had done everything he needed to. He had been a world champion up 10 million times, Flair and Sting a million times over, the Cactus Jack run, like everything the man had done. He had a Hall of Fame career. Even if he's not my guy, I respect what he had done in wrestling. Yeah. You know what I mean? TNA for him was very much like Dusty Rhodes. Again, it was comfortable. He had a chance to go in and have fun with his friends. It didn't have to be about money at that point. Yeah. And with some of these older guys in TNA, it was one or the other. Sting didn't necessarily need the money. He wanted to wrestle and have fun. Some of the older guys, some of them needed the money. But, that was the thing with Sting is, like, he didn't want to have the WWE, 45 weeks a year on the road and, TV on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. Like, he didn't want to have to live that life. He wanted to be able to be home on the weekends with his family and stuff.
This is past Asylum Years, but I love that now that he's like, he's finished this rivalry, at least for right now. But I love that when he first gets in, they they use him for like the world title picture, but then he's in this long freaking program with Abyss of all people, like trying to get through the monster, and I'm like, I loved it. Like it's the first time I'm just like, okay, I'm getting in with Abyss. Like, okay, let's do
You
it.
haven't got to Joker's Sting yet, have you?
No, but I've seen plenty of clips.
Okay.
Like,
I'm curious
um,
about your take when you get there for that version of
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've seen plenty of clips and everything. I think he does a great job. I'm like, what up, Steve Borden, aka Jim Carrey? Like, there's so many times his face, I'm just like, you are Jim Carrey. Like,
Some of me wishes he would have brought that into AEW with the crazy, like him and Darby would have been perfect for the
Yeah.
Joker, like for them to have done it together. Like,
yeah,
yeah, but still, I digress.
There's two more people I want to talk about, and a match, which I'm wondering if it's the match that you have in your notes. But we'll start first with, you brought him up earlier. We love him to this day. Ron the Truth Killings.
National treasure.
National treasure. Guard that. Give that man Secret Service for the rest of his life.
He is an equivalent of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Like, do not let anything happen to this person.
Mm-hmm.
Period. End of story.
First African American NWA champion. It's so weird though watching this now and knowing what he does now, where he just acts so out there. To see him in the serious role, it just throws me, or it threw me, I should say, when I was watching it. But I mean, yeah, and I hate that they he's there, but he starts to trickle down, and you get some things where he does stuff with, it's him and Conan and Road Dogg, aka BG James,
James,
who gives him I'm just like, really, the suntan Superman, but he's fantastic and he's great. And I mean, I hate that we didn't get to see that in WWE. Let him be a real contender. I mean, they did kind of with the K-Quick the first run, but I don't know. He was great. I hate that he he was there and he was a standard and he was okay, cool. They could have made him a main event, constantly going after that title, or title, chasing the title or title run. And then, he's in a feud and then, hey, I'm revisiting him. You're having him revisit the world title again. And they don't do that. It just kind of starts off here and it just kind of teeters down.
It was the right time at the right place for them to do what they did.
Yeah.
And I 1000% think Ron Killings was the right call for that.
Yeah.
I think, however, looking at Ron's career overall, I love R-Truth, again, national treasure. He is a character wrestler, and even in the most serious roles that he was in with Ron the Truth Killings and some of that work, it was still more the story than anything. And it didn't necessarily need to be about a title. Yeah. You know what I mean? Ron has always been, and even now in WWE, he's a WWE guy, in my opinion. He is a character wrestler. He's made for WWE TV, and he has shown it because he has been successful in every era of WWE since the Attitude Era, essentially. You know what I mean? He's had appearances and been hired and let go and brought back because he's great at what he does. Mm-hmm. He's not the kind of guy that needs a million title reigns, even though somehow he ended up with a million title reigns, if you count the 24/7 title. But overall, from beginning to end, he's one of those guys that's had a career that's a million miles long. Yeah. And, people celebrated The Undertaker for hitting his 30-year mark. And then you think about Ron the Truth Killings is 2 years away from that, and he's still active for the 30 years, he will more than likely still be wrestling in 2027 when he hits the 30-year mark or whatever it is. He will probably still be an active wrestler at that point because he works so safe and he does so well. And coming full circle, his TNA run, he was that person turned up to 11 because he's the same worker then that he is now. The only difference is he was bumping a lot more. He was taking risks and he was doing things that helped him become a world champion.
Yeah. It threw me the first time that, like, 'cause it wasn't initially, but towards the end of the Asylum into, like, when they're in the studio in Universal, his music starts playing. I'm like, "That's the same damn music from WWE." And I did a quick Google, and I'm like, "He used the same music?" And it was, yeah, I mean, it's him. He owns it, so, like, he got to bring it over, and they let him use it, and I'm just like, I was not expecting that. I just was, like, watching it one day, like, half watching it, like, doing things around the house, watching it, and I'm like, "He's saying 'What's up?' and singing 'What's up?'" Like, it just threw
That's
me.
yeah. It's been his thing his whole career. It's his
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. So the last person I wanna talk about, and it leads into the match, it's the King of the Mountain, Jeff Jarrett, and the King of the Mountain match.
Yep.
Yep.
Good.
Like,
Good.
well, let's talk about Jeff Jarrett first. Everybody talks about, we've done a whole damn episode on Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a Jeff Jarrett fan. Like, I think he's a great heel. I think he gets great heat. And I think and I think a lot of times it's because, like, he is kind of repetitive. Like, he's gonna play his hits. He's gonna come in, he's gonna hit somebody with the guitar, he's gonna hit the stroke, he's gonna do a figure four, he's gonna do the strut, he's gonna hit somebody else with a guitar. Like, he's gonna cheat to win, and he's gonna celebrate like he won the World Series. Like, but I love me some Jeff Jarrett. Um, but I have to admit, there's some times during these Asylum years where I'm just like, okay, like he was gone for about 6 months where I am right now, and he just came back, and I'm like, you could have stayed away a little bit longer, Jeff. Like, just for a little bit, just for a little bit longer. Um, but Jeff Jarrett and TNA, especially these early Asylum years.
People say they use the analogy in the IWC that, Becky Cena, Bianca Cena, like, they're too big. They won't put anybody over. All they do is win all the time. Jeff Jarrett walked so John Cena could run. Like, Jeff Jarrett put himself over in some places he had no business being over in. And some of these later TNA runs are the perfect example of that. Like, Jeff,
Now, I will play devil's advocate. He also did lose to
okay,
maybe he shouldn't have lost it.
Maybe the better analogy would be Jerry Lawler in the 70s, because Lawler was great at giving up the title so that he could climb that mountain again and get over as the winner. You know what I mean? Jerry the King Lawler and Jeff Jarrett were cut from the same cloth, I guess is the best way to put it.
And because same area, so it makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, they worked together. You know what I mean? His dad, like, Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Lawler, worked together in Memphis putting that promotion. You know what I mean? So, like, they were the ones who tried to buy WCCW. Like, that's the whole thing, though, is Jeff was that guy. Him and his dad built the company from the ground up. He was supposed to be for TNA what Chris Jericho was for AEW. You know what I mean? He was going to be the guy who carried it because he was the most over, best career, held the world title already, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's who Jeff Jarrett is supposed to be for TNA. And he was. And then there are points where you're like, but you don't have to be anymore because, we've developed our AJs and our Kurt Angles and,
Samoa Joe comes in.
The Samoa Joes of the world. We don't necessarily need Jeff Jarrett to be the king of the mountain anymore.
Well, we do get the King of the Mountain match, which we even to this day in NXT with the Iron Survivor match, we see aspects of that. It's not the reverse ladder match where you're having to go hang up the title to literally just take it off again because you won it. Like, to me, that's kind of silly. But, like, the idea of, cool, you can now qualify in this match by pinning somebody or submitting them, and that person has to go into a penalty box. Like, that I love. I think that is brilliant. So, like, when Iron Survivor came out in NXT and they use it, I'm like, cool. Let's embrace this more. What are your thoughts with the King of the Mountain match?
I just recently rewatched this first King of the Mountain match with Allison because she had never seen one.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, if there's one thing I hope TNA brings back now, it's a King of the Mountain match. I want to see one. I said the X Division was one of the most innovative matches in wrestling, and this is definitely the other one. You know what I mean? I like the idea of hanging the title. I like the idea. It's a little bit more aggressive than just climbing up and ripping it down. You still have to fight up and then hang it. You know what I mean? Because hanging it takes two hands. You can reach up there with one hand and rip it down real fast. Like, I like the added difficulty of having to climb up. The added addition of the penalty box, because you get I'm pretty sure in that very first one, it was the Raven Chris Harris moment where they're locked inside the penalty box together. And it's like that, oh shit, two big grown men like in a 2x2 box. Yeah.
So it looks like a British phone booth.
Yeah, it's exactly it. And that's you got so much good spots and moments. If Twitter was around, that's the shit that would have gone viral.
Yeah.
Like, that was what was great about. And the general feel of the uncertainty of what it means, the idea of explaining it and the rules, and it was so different and out there. Everybody was like, what?
Yep. I mean, I can't say more than that. I mean, the King of the Mountain match is fantastic. There's been 2 in the time that I've watched them. The things I tell people if they've never watched TNA is going to be go watch King of the Mountain matches, go watch X Division matches, and go watch the 6 Sides of Steel match between Christopher Daniels, Elix Skipper, and then American Most Wanted. Like, I think when that cage match happened, I texted Michael and said, I think I have a new favorite match of all time, and it's from TNA, and I don't know how I feel about that.
That second one, again, I've got the list up. Slammiversary 05, Sean Waltman. I forgot X-Pac.
He comes in and out a ton.
I forgot he was in TNA at all, because that second one by 2005, the second King of the Mountain match, they're already in Orlando by that point. So, like, by the end of year 3 of the company,
the first 3 years
in 05.
Yeah, the first 3 years are
June of 2005. They're in Orlando, and again, I'm looking at the list, so this is recalled from memory. But I didn't remember it being that soon.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, looking at it, I'm like, June of 05, like, holy shit, because that's barely 3 years in Nashville, and it felt like they were there a lot longer than that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were doing weekly pay-per-views, so it's gonna feel
weekly shows was wild.
So that's 152, at least 150 episodes. You know, give or take. You were like, there was a few where they took off, but and they even said it on there, but for like holidays and things. But let's say 3 years, 52 weeks a year, like
150 episodes of wrestling. I'm gonna go watch the 6-sided cage match now, though. I'll probably watch it tonight.
It's great. And then find I think it's Sacrifice 07. I just watched. Find the I forget what the stipulation is, but the Chris Harris James Storm match, like, it's awesome. Like, it's one of the bloodiest matches I've ever seen.
This definitely fired it up. I've got a semi-busy work week. I'm going to have some time sitting in front of me with some wrestling on. I'm going to go back and rewatch some of this old TNA. Now, I'm going to watch the 6-sided cage match tonight, though.
It's great. It's great. Like, and Christopher Daniels is somebody we didn't even talk about. Like, he's a staple in that X division. Like, he's like, you know.
This is a question me and Bo talked about. We were on Apron Bump talking about Slammiversary 07, I think, maybe. But it was like, with Christopher Daniels, if he had gotten signed by WWE and been the higher power and took his career that direction, would we have gotten TNA? Would we have gotten Ring of Honor? You know what I mean? Like, if he had been a WWE guy, because he was one of those guys who were such a focal point in TNA, in Ring of Honor, in AEW later. Like, if he had gotten to WWE that early in his career and spent his whole career in WWE, would TNA, Ring of Honor, AEW all be what they are today without CD?
I don't know. He plays I mean, he's that tag team with Elix Skipper for so long, and that's really, like, everything he's like. This is the most Christopher Daniels I've gotten a chance to watch. Like, and of course it's when he's younger, so you know he's doing more than what you see in AEW, and I'm digging it. like I'm like, okay, I get the hype behind Christopher Daniels now, like because I never really like dug into his career, and I'm like, I like him with AJ as a tag team, and then I like them feuding. Um, he, I don't. I don't necessarily see him as a WWE guy. It has nothing to do with his size or his ability or anything. I just don't see him in the mix in this time frame. And in the time frame, I always like with where you said this is like ruthless aggression era, right? So you're looking at the Batistas, the Ortons, the Guerreros, the
He would
Benoit,
have ended up in FC
like
or OVW and shit with, Cena and Orton
I
and those
mean,
guys.
it's almost like saying one of these things is not like the other. Like,
He would have gotten washed out because he
yeah,
would have stood out in that class.
yeah, like Vince would have looked at everybody else and been like, "Yoop, yoop, yoop, not you."
So he would have probably ended up at TNA and Ring of Honor anyways.
Yeah.
Truth
But
be
yeah,
told.
but he's great. I mean, he's fantastic. Like, I'm excited to see what he does. And the weird thing is though, like watching certain talents that were there early on that I know one later become like TNA world champion, like Chris Sabin, Alex Shelley, and like now and like becoming the Motor City Machine Guns and things like that. And watching them so early on, that's really weird.
Seeing people like Lance Storm, not Lance Storm, Lance Archer.
Oh yeah, he's there right now. Well, now with what he's doing right now, he's dancing.
Yeah.
So
like that's what I'm saying. But you think about now, like his career, he's went on to be IWGP US Heavyweight Champion. He's been a tag champion in a few places. Like started his first big run was in TNA.
Yeah,
like
it's weird. I'm actually like right now with where I am. It's with all the big names starting to come in, like Christian Cage is there, and what I just watched, he just lost the title to Angle, and Sting's there, and I know eventually like Mick Foley's gonna be there, and I'm almost like, I want to get past that. I want to get past that section. I want to get into like that next generation after that because I know it's gonna be a long walk to get through Hogan, Bischoff, that time frame.
When did Billy Corgan buy the company, or when was he involved with TNA?
Later
on.
I can
remember the years. I think about that's again just another name to throw in the barrel of why we decided to do a World Championship Wreckage show. We could have done it. Could have been a fucking TNA based show because there's so much history in that company. TNA technically, in all actuality, has lasted longer than WCW did. 1989 with the TV show through 2001, 12 years. TNA has been around 23 now. Like double the length of time WCW was around.
Yeah. Well, you don't think about it.
No. Like you look at it now and you're like, as I say those words out loud, it comes out of my mouth. I'm like, holy fuck. TNA is twice the age that we saw WCW get to.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And yes, there's some controversy going on right now. Like, where's TNA going to be going? Are they going to be TNA anymore? Are they going to get bought up? Are they not going to get bought up? Like, oh, they brought this person back, and oh, how dare they bring that person back? And they lost this person and that person and that person to here, and here. Like, that's the wrestling business. Like, at the end of the day, what do I always say? It's the business. It is a wrestling business.
Wrestling business, not wrestling friendships.
Yeah, right. Well, that's all I got, Will. Any last words on the TNA Asylum years? I don't have any caged answers to show you. I'm sorry.
Really, really impressed with the two of us. I know you had a lot more notes than I did, but I am super impressed that we held an hour-long conversation with as little time to prepare as we did. And I think, again, it shows you how fucking great TNA is. From history from the fans' perspectives. That's the slogan, right? Like, this episode should tell you need to go watch that 02 to 05 range of TNA wrestling. If
there's
you
bad stuff you got to get through, but man, there's some gold.
the highs are so high that the lows won't matter.
Yeah.
I will say that. If you can watch AEW weekly, you can handle Asylum TNA.
Oh, I'm clipping that. That's a great way to end it. We're going to leave it on that. Well, besides our wise word, we talked about him earlier. The American Dream. I do it every time. It's not Husky. I would have to have like Husky, like
we should get Husky to do the clip.
This. Yeah.
We should do. Oh God, I'm going to see Husky in like 2 months. I'm going to make him do it.
I'm thinking about coming down for that, by the way.
Yes, we'll talk about that. Yeah,
I'm gonna try. But here we go. Wise words from Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, baby, I got one more thing to say. Your gas tank is full. Your dipstick is in. Your windows washed. Y'all come back and see me again.